On this row right here, what happens to the footprint between Margie and my son Isaac right here? The footprint disappears, doesn't it? It becomes very light. So what's that tell us about that particular row and that particular spot? What's that planter wanting to do? She's wanting to come out of the ground. So we've already changed depth of planting, and Missy talked about how important that is. But we got an area here where that row unit's coming out of the ground. What would cause that row unit to come out of the ground? Could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of things depending on how well we fit the seed bed. This spring it could be something like this. It could be a wheel track that we have to deal with out there. So it could be a past grain cart track. It could be a wide tillage pass. Could be a lot of different variables on the back side. 2010, I predict, is going to give us some of the toughest looking corn we've seen in a long time. Why do you say that? I say that because I think we're going to have some challenges with our seedbed conditions. Who in here did not get all their fall tillage done? Pretty large group in the room, depending on where you were and where your farm is. There's a lot of tillage yet to be done. Who in here harvested in moist to wet conditions? In a situation where we harvest in pretty tough conditions, and you know, we have to think that all the way through. I probably had a dozen different fields that I went to visit where a client would call and say, well, I'm glad I'm no-tilling because my neighbor who's doing tillage is sinking in 6-8 inches and cutting the field up something fierce. And I'm not. I'm staying afloat. And then I go to the field and realize what they have is a 3-inch deep combine lug track. What's that going to do to a corn planter next spring? He might as well set it down on the rumble strip out on the highway. If you're planting 1 3/4 deep into 3-inch lug tracks, this is going to make for some pretty tough planting conditions next spring. So we have to think about what we have out there and what we're trying to accomplish. We talked about wheel tracks. We also have to think about what we did in the spring of 2009. In this situation, this is, of course, an aerial picture, and if you're sitting up here in front, you realize there's streaks going this way when the farmer did his soil finishing pass before he planted. So we have wheel tracks going this direction from spring tillage. What are these tracks going this way? These are what we call planter pinch rows. Planter pinch rows from this spring's planting. What has happened in the last, definitely the last 3 years that has really brought the concept of pinch rows, the rows that are between the tractor tires and the planter carrying wheels. What has happened in the last 3 years in the planter industry that's really brought the issue of what we call pinch rows to life? Center fill planters, right? The center fill planters, where we took all this weight that used to be distributed across maybe 48 or 36 depth wheels or 32, and now we centered it in one location on the hitch of the planter. And then for good measure, we added a 700-gallon starter tank to add some more weight to it. Tremendous weight on these pinch rows in a situation where, think about, if we go back here to the pinch rows, think about this is your farm and you had this kind of pinch rows from 2009 and you harvest this, didn't get your tillage done, and you decide you're going to no-till corn on corn next year. What's ahead of you? Will these tracks show up next year? Sure they will, and you won't want to plant right on top of last year's row, so you're going to move over a little bit. What are you going to add to this field? You're going to add more pinch rows to that picture, as far as how we're going to keep it in the ground. Then, of course, there is the ruts. And it kind of depends on whether you got ruts or wheel tracks, how that changes your spring application. But if this was your operating procedure during harvest, you have ruts. These are not wheel tracks, these are ruts. Scratching these in isn't going to work. It's a situation where I think a lot of us have realized that there's portions of these fields that are just going to demand tillage. We're going to have to go in there and we're going to have to take care of these. There is no way to plant here. We have to think about the 2010 planting season. In these scenarios, if this is your farm or parts of your farm, we've got to think about plantability. We've got to do everything we can to get this field in condition to plant. As far as taking out the compaction and the issues from the wheel tracks, we're not going to get that done this spring. We're going to have to be like good Cub fans and wait till next year.